Hey guys, Jay here, Coach RX. We looked at the deadlift picture and really good comments and feedback and cues that you guys threw out there, so I just wanted to go into it a bit deeper. What was the fault we were seeing? Let's get as precise as we can, because clarity is power. The more precise you can be about the fault you're seeing, the more precise and specific you can make your cues, and the more likely they are to be effective and get the result that you want. So the first thing, you'll call it that midline fold, that rounding hyperflexion of the spine. If we're specific about what region of the spine, because it can be flexed in some regions but not in others. He was definitely rounding the thoracic spine, rounding the lower back, the lumbar spine, and his head is actually, his neck is actually a little bit of extension, so he's actually kind of like craning up like this. So that was the first fault. The second one, which Sean picked up, and I really like this, is in his setup. So ideally in the setup, you want that triangle, so hips slightly above knees, shoulders slightly above the hips. He was a little bit up here, so his shoulders were almost kind of slightly down the hips, or in other words, hips slightly up from the shoulders. Why is that important? Here's the biggest reason. As much as the cues that we threw out there, that you guys threw out there, with the chest up, back straight, are totally valid and specific to the result that we want to get the midline in neutral, the setup might prevent you or prevent those cues from being effective, and here's why I think that would be the case. If you've ever watched someone do a good morning or a remaining deadlift or something like that, I'm sure you've seen what happens if they don't have enough flexibility. So as they're reaching down, they'll get to a point and eventually they'll have to round the back to be able to get further. So what does that do? When you round your back, your pelvis is posteriorly tilting, it's creating slack at the hip end of the hamstring and allows you to get a little bit further at the cost of the sacrifice of your lower back position. So what does that mean for our guy in the picture then? Well, what it means then is he might be rounding his back as a result of the lack of his flexibility, in which case you can throw all the chest up, all the correct spinal cues in the world, but if he's there at the mercy of his hamstrings or his hip flexion flexibility, he might physically not be able to get there, even if he understands what you're shooting for. So if we correct the setup position first, it will then mean that you're setting yourself up to make your cues to the midline that much more successful. So I really like that from Sean. The second thing I was going to say with the thoracic spine, Dina, I really like what you're saying about retracting your shoulders, trying to get the shoulder blades back with the tactile cue. I think that's great. One thing I'd say though is that the shoulder blades are the slave to your thoracic spine. And what do I mean by that? Well, if your thoracic spine is kyphotic and you're very rounded, the shoulder blades will protract by default. Which means then I can be in a rounded up of that position, I can do what you're wanting them to, is I can retract the shoulder blades back, but you see how my midline and my thoracic spine is still rounded? So it means then that I won't be able to fully retract my shoulder blades until I'm in that thoracic spine position, and then it's got to be spine first and shoulder blades afterwards. So how can we get even more specific about getting a neutral midline? Because chest up is absolutely valid cue, and that works, that definitely works a lot of the time. But if we're saying that, if it was the case that the shoulders, as this gent was, that shoulders were too low, and shoulders were lower than the hips and we wanted them higher up, then chest up might get us to where we want to be, or bum down or knees forward. In this case though, let's just say hypothetically that he was in the right setup position, but it was just that he was rounded here. Is chest up necessarily going to fix it? Well, I can bring my chest up, but my back's still rounded. So what can we do to try and get that specific to that midline? Something I found really effective on a number of occasions in WODs, in low intensity environment, in the skill, is chest out or proud chest. And you can do this for yourself now. Just sit there, deliberately round your back, and then push your chest out. And immediately, by default, you end up in a spinal neutral position. If you apply that to the deadlift, same thing. So we'd go bum down first. If you were still here, chest out, push your chest out. And there we go. Now, it might not necessarily work if someone's really fatigued in a WOD environment, or if it's a beginner novice client. So what I do with them sometimes is I'll either get them in a quadruped position, like this, And in this closed chain position, often it's much easier to get this done. So I get them to go where they're at, so into rounded upper back position, go into that angry cat position, feel how kind of loose it is in their upper back. Then I say pull your chest towards the floor, proud chest, just until they're in neutral, not until they go into hyperextension, but just into neutral. I do the same thing in the rest position, so hands on the knees, push your chest out, round your back. Do you feel how loose that is? Oh yeah. Push your chest out, sometimes use the hand as a bit of a reference point to where they're shooting for. And I get to feel, can you feel that tension? Can you feel that tightness? You're back, like, yeah, I can feel it. So that's what I want you to feel at the set of your deadlift. So because they can't see themselves, but if you anchor a sensation of feeling that correlates to the correct position, they can take that forwards and use that every time they come back into not just a deadlift, but any movement that requires that neutral spine position and that back tension, which is pretty much everything. So a few tips for you there. Really great feedback. I really like your comments. Hopefully see you at the event on the 20th, and stay tuned with the Facebook for any updates that we're putting on there. Thanks guys, see you in a bit.